I speak today on the government's Bill 55, an act to implement budget measures and to enact and amend various other acts. This is the government's omnibus bill to implement their budget. The Liberals call their budget Strong Action for Ontario. This budget is anything but strong action. I would go so far as to suggest that this government does not know what restraint means. In my mind, it couldn't get much worse. A $15 billion deficit, a $240 billion debt, and an increase in spending of $2 billion. This is a budget that proves the Liberals have not grasped the gravity of our province's financial situation. This budget does not reduce spending, it does not reduce our deficit, it does not reduce our debt, and this budget has no jobs creation plan. This budget continues with total disregard for our economic realities. The proof of this came from the world markets 2 weeks ago. Standard & Poor's downgraded Ontario's credit outlook from stable to negative. The next day, Moody's downgraded Ontario's credit rating from AA1 to AA2. Moody's actually warned this headstrong government in December that we were headed toward a downgrade. This means that the government of Ontario has lost the confidence of the moneylenders of the world. The consequence of these downgrades could make it more expensive for the province to borrow money. An interest rate increase of 1% would equal a $500 million increase in interest payments on the province's debt. Debt servicing is already the third largest item in the budget. Each year, we pay over $10 billion in interest payments to service our debt. Over 8% of this budget goes toward interest. Over the last 8 years, the Liberal government has taken Ontario from being Canada's economic engine to being a have-not province. Now we receive equalization payments from the federal government instead of providing them. It goes without saying that the Liberal campaign slogan, "Forward Together," isn't a good slogan for Ontario when we are at the edge of an economic cliff. My comments today will highlight the problems with the budget: increased government spending and debt, short-sighted energy policy, expensive education policy, a lack of a public sector wage freeze, a reluctance to sell public assets, and the negative impacts on private sector job creators. On spending and debt, this budget shows the Liberals haven't found a cure for their spending addiction, as they will add $23 billion to the province's debt. Next year, their own numbers show that the net debt is scheduled to increase to over $260 billion. This government is mortgaging our grandchildren's future, and they don't seem to care. The Auditor General and economist Don Drummond both have tried to sound the alarm bells to wake this government from its spending stupor. Both identified areas where savings can be made and tighter management of the public purse should be implemented. In spite of these expert recommendations, the Liberals propose to increase spending in 14 of 24 ministries. These 14 ministries represent 82% of the budget. This budget takes us in exactly the wrong direction. On energy, the Green Energy Act is a financial failure. Subsidizing the so-called green energy sector and paying small-scale producers up to 80 cents per kilowatt hour for their solar and wind electricity is bankrupting us. This will cost us many tens of billions of dollars over the next 20 years. This at a time when we have a surplus of electricity in Ontario that we have to sell to New York and Quebec for as little as 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Our electricity costs are predicted to rise rapidly in the near future. Our homeowners can't afford it. Our businesses can't afford it. A manufacturing company in North Bay paid a new fee on their hydro bill last year of $1 million. It is called the Global Adjustment Charge. 3 years ago, this charge didn't exist. It is predicted to increase sixfold in the next 10 years. This company has 250 employees and says it will have to leave Ontario if the Global Adjustment Charge continues to increase. The Global Adjustment Charge was created to pay for the Green Energy Act. The Green Energy Act is driving businesses and jobs out of Ontario. The Liberal government could have purchased all the green hydroelectricity that we needed from the province of Quebec for about 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Why didn't they do it? On education, full-day junior kindergarten is a great idea, but at this time we cannot afford it. As Don Drummond outlined in his report, this is a program that should not be expanded until our deficit crisis is under control. It is a $1.5 billion cost that must be postponed. On public sector wage freezes, public sector wages need to be frozen across the board until we're out of this debt and deficit quagmire. Our public sector workers will be asked to share the burden of paying our massive government debt. It's the right thing to do. On Crown corporations, government should be doing what only government can do. All else should be left to the private sector. The Drummond report recommends that we should sell one of the casinos in Niagara Falls. I agree. We should also sell the LCBO and all other Crown corporations. Government should be smaller, and we need the money. On job creation, for the trades, we should change the required ratio of journeyman tradesmen to apprentices from the current ratio of 3 to 1 to a ratio of 1 to 1. This could create up to 200,000 new, good-paying jobs for skilled tradespeople, young people. We should have reduced the corporate income tax rate from 11.5% to 10%, as was promised by this government. This would have been an incentive to industry to invest in plants and jobs. Mr. Speaker, I would say we have a problem in this House. What we need is a select committee on Orange to solve many of the problems on the overspending on Orange. For that reason, I move to adjourn the debate.